everyone, and welcome to Capes, Cowls Masks, the show where we uncover the world of soups and science fiction. I'm your host, Jake Hart. I'm a podcaster, a sound designer, and a writer for the Fresh Take Hub. And as always, I'm joined by my fellow co-host.
Hello, I'm David Osger. I am a multimedia journalist and editor over on freshtakehub.com and general all-round nerd. Unfortunately,
Tom couldn't be with us this week. He's currently moving, so he currently is homeless, I think, right now, before he can actually move into the new flat.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all? Yes. Yeah, it's a funny chain of events as we're all currently moving at the same time. So, naturally, we had to bring a guest in to fill in the void, and you know what? He's not doing anything these days at this point, like Rob Hailing. He's become part of the Capes, Cowls Masks roster. It's Stefanos Florakis.
Hello. I am tired, but always happy to be here.
Yes, it's a late one, and I'm not going to say it's going to get any easier for you, Steph, because this is the news show, and we're going to be breaking down the Matrix Resurrections trailer. So there's going to be a lot of theorizing, a lot of talking about that. But in general, we got a lot of trailers. This is trailers this week. So before we get into all of that and break down all these wonderful trailers, Dave, how are you? What have you been up to, man?
I'm good. I'm also like Steph. I'm pretty tired. I think the lack of sleep has finally caught up with me today in terms of packing and so much ready and everything for my own move as well. As you can see behind me, my films have gone and my Funkos and everything. I'm just looking at kind of like an empty desk, and I'm kind of, once this episode is recorded, the desk can be disassembled. So this podcast episode has the privilege of hosting my desk and my computer and everything in this room for potentially the last time. So this is the last piece of the puzzle now before I have to take that apart, which should be fun. But yeah, so not had much chance to go through other stuff because of that. I've been going through a lot of random deep dives into different things. Obviously looking through things like Disney Plus with packing, it has been a chance to be like, okay, chuck this on in the background. So I went back to the Spider-Man animated series. That's a good one. So kind of put on as you're doing stuff. I think, what was the episode I was just watching? Oh, that was it, where they wanted the tablet of time, and Kingpin is trying to get the tablet, and then the villain just turns into a baby when he wants to become young. And I was just watching it thinking can you just can we do a Benjamin Button? Can we actually see you become the womb and everything? Can this just keep going and going? This is, really push the boundaries here of children's storytelling. Yeah, so I was watching that. I've also been watching randomly again, as people will know. I was going through the Godzilla films, which I still need to continue with. But that kind of still made me fascinated with random Japanese media. So I was watching that Marvel episode about the Spider-Man Japanese show that they did before. And I've also been watching this British YouTuber kind of break down Super Sentai series, and just realizing how batshit crazy those shows are. We talk about crazy things that happen with superheroes in comic books and their adaptations, but Jesus Christ, some of the stuff that happens in these Japanese spandex wearing costumes are insane. and just watching somebody react to that is always fun as well. So yeah, a lot of smaller content stuff I can put on in the background, but hopefully back to normality soon once I'm all settled.
Yes, an end of an era for you of podcasting in that room. It's almost bittersweet because I'm the same. I'm my Funkos are still all here, but very soon I'll be packing up and I'll be going, oh, I've recorded many hours of podcast in this room, but looking forward to where we move to next. Steph, how about you, man? What have you been up to?
Not much. Basically, today I woke up really early on to book my tickets for the BFI London Film Festival. Because I'm a BFI member, the box office opens at 10 a.m. But once I went there at 10, the whole thing just crashed. and for a good 45 minutes, or yeah, maybe an hour, I don't even remember anymore. We couldn't do anything. But in the end, everything went well. I booked 16 tickets, and my bank account is crying very, very loudly. But I'm very excited. You know, after a whole year not going to London to watch films in the festival, I'm very excited, and so I'm now doing my planning, going there in October, and just enjoying my time. And but also, in other news, I watched *Malignant*, a new James Wan film, and it's bonkers. It's like oh god, and we're gonna talk about James Wan later on, and I think I will bring this up because oh boy, what a film! What a film! What a twist! Oh god, what an amazing experience in a theater for the five people that were in there. It was great.
That doesn't bode well then for that film, I guess, because in America it's also releasing on HBO Max. Yeah, that's on my watch list. I really want to check that out. I'm a fan of James Wan's horror stuff. But like, I'm really intrigued because you said like the trailers and all the marketing is just totally different to what the actual film is.
Well, the thing is, the first two acts of the film, basically, it kind of seems exactly the way you think it's gonna go. And while I was watching it, I was starting getting a bit bored because I was very certain I was gonna go in a very certain direction, and then it doesn't, and I freaked out. It was one of the few times that I nearly screamed of what the surprise was. And this is where for me it became amazing, but also I know for a lot of other people this will became actual shit. But the thing is, I love crazy shit. So because James Wan, for me, he's amazing when he's doing crazy shit. And like we talked about the previous episode about Aquaman, my favorite parts in Aquaman is when it went completely bonkers. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Watch *Malignant*. Maybe you're gonna hate it. Maybe you're gonna love it. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel as if the way you're describing it, it sounds like one of like a classic M. Night Shyamalan type of twist where people are like, "Oh, that was amazing," or "That's absolutely awful," and just loses it for them. Dave, are you interested in seeing *Malignant*? I know you're not much of a horror fan.
No, exactly. Yeah, I wasn't. From what I had seen, I wasn't too interested in viewing it. And from what Steph has said there, I don't think I would enjoy it because, as much as I enjoy like crazy shit in kind of like fantasy and sci-fi, I don't usually enjoy it in horror. So when he was talking about the twist, I was kind of getting sort of mother, like, what's it called? What's that? Oh God, what's the film before Midsommar? Yeah, what was the other one?
Oh, Hereditary.
Yeah, Hereditary. So yeah, when he mentioned that, I was getting mother like Hereditary kind of vibes of just like, oh, like big twist. This weird thing happens for some reason, and it goes really dark and twisted, and I'm just sat there like, what the hell am I watching? And yeah, I've never really enjoyed James Wan's horror stuff before because it's kind of, again, one of those directors where people are just like, oh yeah, if you don't like horror, check this out, you're gonna love it. And then I watched Insidious and was like, what are you talking about? I absolutely hate this.
Oh yeah, by the way, I love all the films you just said, but in all fairness, I think *Malignant* is not like horror. It's actually far more of a thriller mystery. But yeah, again, I'm afraid to recommend it to anyone unless if I know what they like. And yeah, maybe not for you, David.
Yeah, Dave might miss that one out. Although, if you are going to see another horror film this year, please see Candyman. And I recommend everyone to see Candyman. Purely, if anything, to see Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, which we will talk about a bit later on. Right, so let's get into the news.
Tear up page 1, run that photo instead.
Headline?
Spider-Man, hero or menace? Exclusive Daily Bugle photo.
Right, so our first bit of news is, like I said at the top, it's trailers, trailers, trailers. And the first trailer is from Injustice, the animated film coming from Warner Brothers and DC Animation. It will be available on October 19th on PVOD and Blu-ray and 4K. And this is based off the original graphic novel series, and then eventually it became the video game series. Or was it the other way around? I can't remember.
The other way around.
The other way around. Video game, then it became comics, by Tom Taylor. So this is basically, the synopsis is, Injustice finds an alternative world gone mad where the Joker has duped Superman into killing Lois Lane, sending the Man of Steel on a deadly rampage. Unhinged, Superman decides to take control of the Earth for humanity's own good. Determined to stop him, Batman creates a team of like-minded freedom-fighting heroes. But when superheroes go to war, can the world survive? Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel as if at this point now, I am kind of getting tired of the whole Superman goes evil sort of thing. I think we've seen that sort of story arc played out enough. And look, this is coming from someone who is a big fan of Zack Snyder and what he did with Superman in his DC stuff. I love what he did with it, but I feel as if reading the synopsis to this and then seeing the trailer, I'm like, isn't this basically Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 2? Because it's very similar to something he was setting up from what we saw in the Zack Snyder's Justice League earlier this year. So, yeah, I'm just kind of tired of the whole evil Superman thing. We're also seeing a version of it with Invincible and Omni-Man. And, we've also got Homelander with the boys. It's, can we move beyond this now? Can we have Superman as a beacon of hope as he's supposed to be? On that note, I will say I'm a big fan of the comics by Tom Taylor. I think he told a really good story. I only played the games briefly. I don't think I ever played it from start to finish. I like the story enough. And, but the animation still looks like very safe DC, straight-to-video type of animation. Nothing's wowing me. And then the voice cast as well, nothing about it is extremely wowing me. Apart from Gillian Jacobs voicing Harley Quinn, she seems to be getting around in another project we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, I'll throw it to you, Steph. What do you make of the trailer and this idea of keep bringing back the evil Superman?
The only thing that I took away from that synopsis is unhinged, and I immediately thought of the Russell Crowe film, which is funny because he was Kal-El in Man of Steel. So I'm thinking now of a different universe where Russell Crowe was playing an evil version of Supes. But yeah, beyond that, the trailer is fine. Whatever. It's I have played the game. I have not read the comic. The game is fine. It's one of those things that it almost sounds like wouldn't it be cool if this would happen like this way? But it's a video game. But also, it's from the people who made Mortal Kombat. So it's gonna be hardcore. That's what it was for me back then. And to be fair, a teenage self of me obviously enjoyed it. But now looking back at it, I'm like, as a game, it doesn't really have much, does it? It's literally just a fighting game, but not much beyond that. Not to diminish fighting games. I think in certain stories it can really work well, but I think the same thing with Mortal Kombat, it only worked with MK whenever they were in the actual combat arena, but when it became actually part of the story, when it started becoming far more intergalactic wars, it just went a bit too much, although the stories did improve. But for this, I'm like, sure, just like most animated films from on this level would go straight to VOD. After a while, I am a bit uninterested. Not that there's anything wrong with them. It's just it doesn't feel urgent, and it doesn't feel that I have to watch it, or it has any kind of gravity either to the overall universe or even to its own story. Because obviously it doesn't try to be its own story. It really plays with the idea of what you know of these characters, and only that. which I really doubt is gonna be a story arc of Clark is beginning as a good guy and seeing the whole arc of becoming a bad guy. Most likely, it's gonna be just like in a video game. It's gonna be meet through a mission. Superman goes in, kills Lois, and then we continue on. Beyond that, it's a good cast. I've seen all of them in multiple things. I really love Kevin Pollak quite a lot, but it was quite strange to hear him in this. But yeah, I might pass it to be honest. But if I'm bored and I want something on the background, maybe I'll just put that in.
Hmm. No, I'll definitely be checking it out just because I've always been a big fan of the DC animated films. If you want to hear more about that, check out our episode about all those films. But yeah, I just think they've got such a big legacy, and at this point, I'm like, I've got to watch them all. I've got to keep watching them, whether they're good or bad. But Dave, where do you fall on this, and what do you think of the trailer?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm glad you said about the evil Superman thing, because I was thinking, watching it, like, oh, Jake might be really into this because there's evil Superman. It's very, Zack Snyder in that way. And yeah, I'm really sick of it, but I guess I was never kind of that into it in the first place. I think it kind of works as a fun what if we want to call it that. But I don't think it should always be your main staple storyline and just shape the character. I think just too many people are just going for it automatically these days. And it'd be interesting to see now where we get like Marvel and the Eternals, where you go like a character like Icarus, who seems to be kind of like the Superman equivalent in like the MCU potentially, and whether they fall into the pitfalls of being like, oh, is he burdened by, how good and how strong he is, etc. So yeah, there's the danger that they could fall into that, or is he just going to become boring? Is he just going to be too much of a goody two shoes, or are they going to play up like the god aspects of him, which is what they seem to be doing? But that's the elements of Superman that I miss, is not playing with any of those kind of tropes. It's just as the kind of like man of the people, the typical superhero, more in the vein of someone like Captain America, but it doesn't make them so like boring. I think that's the problem a lot of people seem to think, is that like if you don't make him evil, he's boring. And I think there's like, well, no, that's just, you're just not writing him in a more compelling enough way. Again, I look at, that's why I've compared him in the past to a character like Spider-Man, because I think that Spider-Man doesn't have to turn evil to become interesting or anything like that. Sure, he has like the Venom stuff, but that's not really like him. So I think that you can make lots of compelling stuff with him. And yeah, I'm just kind of sick of seeing that. And I think that Stefanos mentioning the fact that this is based on a video game, which is from the people who made Mortal Kombat, and that's what it always kind of appeared to me when you see those. For me, I only watched like cutscenes and the kind of like the crazy matchups, and the like it was a game that had the Ninja Turtles like doing up in it, for God's sake. Like the amount of characters they started bringing into those games was just crazy. And yeah, I think that this is definitely something that then suits a video game, in which you like, oh, we need a reason for all of these characters to fight and for all this cool stuff to be happening. And that doesn't really necessarily translate to a cohesive kind of like film or television show. In a video game, it works because you're like, yeah, I get to beat up Batman as Superman and all this kind of stuff. And like you see the cutscenes, you're like, oh, wow, doesn't that look cool? But it's because you're just watching it for like 5-10 minutes or something like that. Whereas I don't think it sort of works as something you sort of sit down and watch. And yeah, like you, Jake, I'm kind of just bored by the animation style. I thought we were going in a more promising direction, While Soul of the Dragon didn't have like the most interesting animation style, it was still a different kind of story. It was just going like, it very much had a like, oh, we want to tell this kind of like 70s kung fu movie vibe to it. And then the Justice Society one, at least again, that looked a bit different. It had sort of like a sort of original look to it. But this to me just seems to be going backwards, and I just think it's just Joker, Superman, Batman. I'm like, I've seen this. And even if you look at the front cover of the film, it just bores me to tears, the fact that it's just like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And they're just like, yeah, the Trinity. Put them on the front cover of like every single DC animated movie. And it looks the same as like every other one. It looks like Superman in that cover looks the same as he looks on the front of, like, I think it's Justice League War, in which he's like flying and the laser beams coming out of his eyes. I'm like, this is just so generic, and like, you're just really just appears as a cash grab. So yeah, I can't see myself rushing to watch this one. And yeah, it makes me kind of, I thought the idea with, Apocalypse War was to maybe sort of reboot this and to start it up again. And from the projects they were doing, it seemed like, oh, okay, they're going for some new stuff. They want to, refresh everything. But now it just seems like they're kind of going down the same pitfalls of being like, that famous storyline in the comics or video games? Yeah, we're going to do that, but in like 90 minutes. And it's just going to have like all the characters you love, and it'll be on this DVD, and then you'll see what the next one is in the same DVD, and it'll have the same front cover as all the other 30 ones we've produced in the last 10 years. And I'm like, this is just going backwards. So yeah, I'm really not interested by this. And it has a lot of the elements that I don't like in DC. It's just this kind of like, oh, dark, gritty. It has to be like evil. It has to be like dark, and people are like dying and their heads are blowing up. And because it's DC animation, so like, 15-year-olds can watch it and it can be grim, etc. And I'm like, that just isn't interesting to me. And like you guys said, there's just enough stuff that's done that at this stage.
I'm sure it'll come out fine, I guess, but it's not one I'm rushing to go see. But I'll still watch it. On DC animation, then what do we got next, Dave?
So we have the Aquaman King of Atlantis trailer has been revealed for HBO Max. It's the new animated series, which is executive produced by James Wan. It's from Warner Media Kids and Family, and obviously DC. And they've released the first promo of the series, which is going to be a 3-part miniseries that follows the titular hero in the first days after on the job as King of the Ocean. So Chapter 1 will be available on HBO Max on October 14th. And yeah, this was kind of like infamous for me anyway, in that a lot of people already attacking this before it came out, when there was like a still released of it, and there was also talk of the new Superman Lois cartoon I think they've got coming up, and both of them have quite distinct animation styles. So a lot of people have been very cautious of this coming out, and were kind of like looking to a trailer to kind of get a big grasp of this, and it really does have a very distinct style. And it's interesting that it's on HBO Max now, as we've seen it's had success in other realms, if you can count like the Harley Quinn sort of animated show, which originated on DC Universe and is kind of like on different services and channels around the world. But this is now one of the first sort of big DC animation projects that are debuting on HBO Max. So very interesting trailer. Jake, what did you think?
After I had to watch it a couple of times because I really didn't know what to expect. I saw the still, and I wasn't critical like some of those people that you were maybe talking about. I was just like, oh, this is interesting, this is new. But then when I found out it's from Warner Media Kids and Family, I'm like, okay, that makes sense that they're going for that sort of animation approach. And I gotta say, I actually really like this trailer. I thought it was funny in all the right parts it needed to be. I thought the animation was really quirky and weird looking as well. It had sort of different vibes from what I saw. Like I got bits of Rick and Morty, bits of Adventure Time, but this sort of weird new hybrid. I don't really know much to say about it. I hope we can be able to see it in the UK somehow. This is a 3-part miniseries. I wonder how long the episodes are going to be. I can't imagine too long if they're going to be aimed towards kids. It didn't really give us much else apart that, but I am actually looking forward to it. And weirdly enough, I kind of more looking forward to this than James Wan's Aquaman sequel. This just seems like it's embracing the fun and the camp of Aquaman and all his weird bonkers world. And I just feel as if that world in the DC corner needs to be, as weird and bonkers as you can get. And if a kids TV show is going to do that, why the hell not? You know what I mean? You also need to keep making content. I know some people hate that word, but you got to keep making content for your HBO streaming service, and this is a great way of doing it, of also bringing in a new generation into this world of DC. So, yeah, I'm all for it. I think it looks great. What about you, Steph?
Yeah, more or less the same. Again, I'm trying not to be as critical because, like I said, it is meant to be for children, and with that kind of like idea, it looks very pleasant. It looks playful. Um, I like how the physical comedy they put into the people, and especially to Aquaman. Um, I really feel that it's gonna be the transition of from Jason Momoa to the more campy, quite lovable idiots. Very similar to how the MCU did with Thor, like because obviously it didn't work to make him overtly serious. So make him into the powerful clown, which works so much better. So, which I'm all up for it. Because personally, even though Momoa stinks with charisma and all that shit, unfortunately, I think he takes it not too seriously, but he could have more fun with the character. He could show a bit more of the silly qualities of that role because, let's be honest, we've been making fun of Aquaman for years. So I think to actually brace that would work. Also, like I said before recording, it really reminded me of Adult Swim animation quite a lot. And now that I remember, there is one that I be watching called To Come Dirty, and the kind of comedy that they're using is very similar to that. The very abstract, surrealistic animation, which works very well for something like Atlantis and Arthur Curry. Also, like before, a shout out to Gillian Jacobs for voicing Mira. But I am surprised that James Wan is producing this because now that makes me think: is he like the person of Aquaman now? Like is like James Gunn is now for the Guardians? Is he the person for Aquaman? Like whatever Aquaman related show or film, is he gonna be part of it now?
It is interesting to have that idea of people being like, I'm not watching it unless it's produced by James Gunn, like, so as if like his stamp was on that character in that film that much, which is, yeah, a bit odd, especially when you look at this and go, yeah, oh, yeah, typical James Wan.
Yeah, but I don't see James Wan like really having any hands-on in this at all. I feel as if this is more like Warner Bros. Going, well, James Wan's doing the movie. He's associated with the movie. Why don't you come in like a meeting to give your blessing on this series, and we'll stick your name on as executive producer, like to sell the series. Which I also think is kind of shitty on the creators of the show, because I don't think we actually have any information on the creators of the show apart from executive produced by James Wan. So I'm a bit miffed about that.
Well, I always go back to the Clone Wars in that example of like, everyone was pissed off about the Clone Wars movie and, that it sucked and it shouldn't have been in cinemas and all that kind of stuff. But the cast and crew of that series have talked a lot about, like, we wouldn't have had the series if it wasn't for that film. That is what allowed Cartoon Network to go, okay, we'll do it because, the revenue or the popularity or the attention from the film will at least direct people to this. But they said they wouldn't have had a series without that. So it's a similar sort of thing. It's just that you have to kind of, unfortunately, accept these negative aspects to get the positives, to get your work out there. And I think that that's why it was important to me to talk about, because like you guys, it reminds me of a lot of like animation and stuff that I really enjoy. I think that, we're in kind of like a golden time for adult animation, which also has a negative side effect. There's a lot of people who I agree with who are saying about how there's just become this very generic, typical kind of animated comedy that is coming out about these days, especially on Netflix. There's a lot of like, they had like things like Hoops and, a lot of like Family Guy kind of like rip-offs, and a lot of Rick and Morty kind of like wannabes, etc. But to me, this does seem to go more in the positives of positive comparisons of series. Like at the moment, you mentioned Tuca and Bertie. Steph, I'm watching Close Enough, which is the guys who made like Regular Show, which was also quite a like very bizarre, very like erratic and crazy animation style, which was very linked to also like Adventure Time, which was out at the same time on Cartoon Network, which is known for its kind of like, gravity defying kind of like animation and expressions and movements, etc. But yeah, this one, what it reminds me of the most is the kind of like days of, the Flash animations and Newgrounds and stuff like that, in which, YouTube and the internet and a lot of like internet humor kind of like was birthed from these like silly, stupid cartoons that people would make like online, but a kind of generation of teenagers and kids grew up on them. And they all had this kind of like goofy eyes and like silly mouths, or they would have moments in which they were just simplified to little dots on their faces and stuff like that. And especially when Orm comes in to the scene and like, he bangs into the door and then you see like his neck extend and that kind of stuff. That's really of those kind of animations. I remember there's quite a few, Loving Back in the day, in which people would take the mick out of things like Sailor Moon and other anime and animations, in which they would use this like over-the-top animation style. And one that reminds me of a lot is Oni NG, I think, which also did like spoofs of Dragon Ball Z, which he called Dragon's Ball PP. And he also did some Harry Potter stuff. He also did a Thor and Loki parody, which was just basically Thor playing a child's keyboard, and then Loki comes in and tells him to stop, and he says, "Oh, were you not liking how I was playing the low key?" Like, that's just the joke. That's just the video. And
that's so stupid though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what this kind of reminds me of, this Aquaman series. And yeah, I just want to call out all these people that were so negative on it. I remembered actually where this popped up and why people saw it. I think there was a HBO Max kind of, when those trailers are like, come into HBO Max, or like, subscribe to HBO Max. I think there was like a quick shot of Aquaman in that. And there was also then this image that's been released of a Superman series, which kind of looks a bit like She-Ra, is it? The Netflix series kind of looks like that kind of like animation style. So the DC fanboys, kind of like went, this is what animation should be, and it's got like an image of like Batman the animated series and Superman the animated series and whatever, and then they're like animation today and like those next to it, and loads of people, rightly so, including animators, were just like, that's just style, there's nothing to say that other type is bad. Yeah, you might just not like it preference wise, but that's the beautiful thing about animation. It's so much about style, creativity, being different. Yeah, I look at that, and obviously my kind of nostalgic brain would sort of like go like, oh my god, like Batman the animated series, I would of course love to see something like that. But at the end of the day, this is different. It looks cool, it looks unique, and that's what has made a lot of animation thrive. Lots of people loved that about like Luca and Soul, the Pixar films that have come out, because they had such a different look to other Pixar films. So yeah, I think the people who go around saying that, one, we've just talked about a project in which we're kind of sick and tired of the tried and tested, dull looking DC animation, and two, animation is just such a creative format, and that's why people do animation, because they want to have this creative freedom to be able to do whatever you want, which isn't restricted by what live action can do. So I think it's really refreshing. I think it's good, and it's a new way of reinventing themselves without being too much like, this is the only way DC animation looks. And to me, it doesn't look too much of like, this is just Rick and Morty. It looks like its own thing.
To just be nice to animators, just that they work so tirelessly to do a thankless job, and then get it, and then fans to sing shit to them all the time. It's terrible, and especially in an industry that it's been really suffering, to get to the animation, it's fucking miracle.
Oh, don't get me started on animation and a certain studio. Let's not go into that. Let's not go into that. Well, anyway, another project coming from that studio is Marvel Studios. It's such a wonderful time. So we got the trailer finally for Hawkeye and the poster as well. So obviously we've got Jeremy Renner coming back as Hawkeye. Haley Steinfeld is playing Kate Bishop. We've also got Vera Farmiga, Frafi, Tony Dalton, Zan McLaren, Brian Darcy James, and Alakwa Cox. And then, as we learnt from Black Widow, Florence Pugh is also set to reprise her role as Yelena Belova, although we didn't see her in the trailer. So yeah, this is a very... not what I expected this series to be in the slightest. So I was looking forward when they announced that the day before, like, oh, the trailer's going to drop. I was like, oh, finally we get a first look, because we really hadn't heard much about what this series is going to be, apart from its sort of adapting Mac Fraction's run on Hawkeye and introducing the character of Kate Bishop. And man, I did not expect the Christmas theme at all. It caught me by complete surprise. The Steve Rogers musical is definitely a choice, and I know a lot of fans are hyped about that. I know Steph is really excited to talk about this. All I will say is that I think this is actually a very good trailer. It looks like a very good show. I'm intrigued with all the plot points they're setting up, and for me, this is more of a taste thing. I'm not huge on Christmas in general and Christmas films and like a Christmas theme, apart from only a couple really, that like Die Hard and stuff like that, and Batman Returns. I'm always a big fan of that. But yeah, Christmas doesn't really vibe with me. And then obviously musicals. Dave knows my relationship with musicals is troublesome, you could say. Yes. So yeah, I'm not sure on my tastes regarding this. I don't know how I'm going to vibe with it, but I will say it does look like a very well put together series with wonderful performances, and I am looking forward to seeing Hayley Steinfeld. She looks absolutely great in this. And speaking of Die Hard, as I mentioned, it is kind of giving me Die Hard vibes. I mean, I spoke with you, Steph, offline about this, and just the sort of I'll be home for Christmas thing, and goons running around, and it just seems very Die Hard influenced. But yeah, that's what I have to say. I'm sure we'll get into it a bit more. But Steph, I can see you're very excited about this. You're probably the most excited out of the three of us. What are your thoughts on the Hawkeye trailer?
Okay, here's two things about me that I'm a complete hypocrite. One, for years I've been kind of dishing on Marvel, always trying to go with the cheap thrills. Don't like very few times going with something very deep and emotionally investing. That is why I love WandaVision and Loki, and even to some extent Falcon Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Uh, and on the other part, I am not a fan of Christmas. I'm actually very cynical with Christmas. I'm always the person. I'm always the person you don't invite me to any Christmas thing, because I will always ruin the mood. Like I will always say, "Oh, do you know that Jesus Christ was born actually in July or something?" or, or
Are you that guy, Steph?
I am
Are you
that guy. Thank goodness I'm not
Just
American.
making a note for the Well Good Movies and Capes and Cowls Christmas special. Don't invite Steph.
like I would have been a terrible American. Like if someone invited me to Thanksgiving, I would be like, well, you do realize we're actually celebrating genocide right now. Like I'd be that kind of person.
You'd be Wednesday Addams essentially then.
Yes, but
Oh, you're a joy at dinner tables, aren't you?
yes, I am. Oh God. Like I don't even decorate. I've become so anti-capitalistic, even though I always buy shit. So but I love Christmas theme action flicks. I don't know what it is. I think it's the aesthetic of it and the setting and the fact that it is a juxtaposition between the background and what is actually happening. Like you said, like Die Hard is a great example. Oh, it's Christmas. It's a Christmas party in a building or in a city or in an airplane. And look, dead people everywhere. For some reason, that makes me happy. And to be fair, I also do like the theme of family. I always have like a soft spot for where you have a sort of regular guy doing the impossible thing and trying helplessly to go spend Christmas time with the family. I think that is something always kind of hits me. I don't know why. I don't have any particular issues. I'm very close with my parents. Whoever spent Christmas together, I don't know what's happening. But yeah, I and also love Shane Black. Actually, one of the very few things I like about Iron Man 3 is the Christmas setting. Like personally, I would have loved if the whole film was taking place in that small town where Tony Stark like lands. I would have loved to have something like that and have like a final standoff in the snow. Let's not talk about that. But yeah, but for both of those reasons, I actually really enjoy what I've seen about Hawkeye. And I did not expect it. I think, like the majority of us, we were all expecting something a bit more, maybe darker, maybe a bit more moodier because of Clint or what he went through. I'm not saying that we're not gonna get any of that. I'm pretty sure we will get some flashbacks to what he did, which is always exciting. But beyond that, I am very happy for what I've seen. It looks like a fun, uh, what's it called? Not a cop show. Not
Buddy
cop duo.
cop.
Yeah, buddy
Buddy
cop.
cop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that thing. I never liked
Mm.
that term, but yeah, that one. I, so far, both of the actors they seem to have good chemistry. But again, it's Marvel is really good usually at that kind of stuff. They're both good actors about it. And then there comes the Rogers the musical. I want that T-shirt. I'm not gonna lie. Once that is available, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna wear it everywhere, and I don't care because that in one T-shirt, you will know that I am a musical nerd and a comic book nerd, and I'm like, I'm complete. Um,
Yeah, Dave. Now, when this trailer dropped in the group chat, I was like, "So, what do you think, Dave?" And you were like, "I have thoughts," and I said, "Good or bad?" And you were like, "I have thoughts." So,
Mm.
I've been on suspense. I still don't know what you think of this trailer.
Well, I think it's worth giving some context as well first. So, a few times before, like we've watched a bunch of the Marvel shows, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, it's Scarlet Witch, one of my favorite characters," and everything like that, which was, kind of true. But also, since the first Avengers film, Hawkeye was one of my favorites, just because I kind of like the underdog, the kind of like character that nobody kind of pays attention to, just so I can be like, hey, I can have this to myself because nobody else likes it. And I just like characters with bow and arrows, Legolas, Katniss, all those. It's a cool thing. And I thought his look was cool. I like Jeremy Renner as an actor. I think he usually does a good job. I think he does a good job in the Avengers movies. And I think his character works in the sense of the team that, he's one of the reasons that I enjoy Age of Ultron as well. The fact that he has that moment in which he's just like done the mind control thing, not doing it again, literally like referencing the gripe that he had with the first film and a lot of people had with the first film. So I appreciated that they, expanded on his character and, give him more of a personality, more story. But that is also the problem with the character, is that he kind of like works because he is a supporting character. He's the more quiet Avenger. He's just there like watching on the sidelines as he does in Endgame. He's just there kind of like watching all the science people do their thing when he's just there with, his mohawk, being Hawkeye. And I think that that's like an appealing aspect of the character to me. So to then give him his own show is kind of like the Puss in Boots problem with Shrek, of like, you like Puss in Boots because they don't give you much of him and he's a fun character, but then once he has his own movie, you're like, no, I did not ask for Puss in Boots movie, this is too much Puss in Boots.
no. Puss in Boots is a great film. It's a lot better than both Shrek. The final two Shrek films are shit. Puss in Boots is actually great. How dare you? I don't know
I'm
what
not
there's
saying it's not a good
treasure.
film. It's a fun film, but it's just that that kind of represents the idea of like, oh, we like this character, now let's like take, and expand it. There's probably better examples, but that was the one that came to mind, in which they kind of ruin the character and the originality because they've then like made too much of them. And I think that that's what's troubling going into like a TV series. But obviously we were kind of like, okay, we're getting Kate Bishop. We kind of see the artwork looks very much like based on that comic series you mentioned earlier, Jake. And there was still an element of, well, you know, we haven't seen Hawkeye as much. He didn't get to do as much action stuff as maybe we wanted to. This will be a good chance to see that. But then since then we've had Falcon Winter Soldier, two characters which, you know, maybe didn't have as much of the spotlight as other characters have in the MCU films. We've had the Scarlet Witch and Vision have their own show, similar circumstance there. And then we've had Loki, which is somewhat similar circumstance there. So then it's hard not to look at this trailer in the vein of just like, oh, and like it's the Oprah Winfrey, or like, you get a show, you get a show. It just seems then they're just like, oh, what other character can we do? Yeah, let's do like Hawkeye. What's he doing? Oh yeah, he's having Christmas with his family, and yeah, he gets like wrapped up in this thing which is linked to the little thing you saw in Endgame, like, woo, you know. And the fact that it has, as Steph kind of put, like such like capitalist, you know, like Christmas, Disney Plus, you know, like the font and stuff added to it really doesn't help that. So I'm really torn because I didn't like a lot of this trailer, but I did like some other stuff. But the entire vibe and the entire trailer makes me really, really worried. One, because I just worried that these MCU shows are starting to become very generic. I think visually it looked quite interesting in terms of like the setting in New York, but at the same time I thought it just looked very like cliche MCU. And I don't know, it just screamed this kind of like, it's a bit like my problems with like Ant-Man in a way, of they're just like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if the MCU did a heist film? It's this kind of like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we did a Christmas film? Like, yeah, you know, like, oh, we're doing the series is coming out at Christmas. Imagine if Hawkeye needs to get back to his family in time for Christmas and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't sound interesting to me. This sounds like, it just sounds like Disney Plus is literally like, it's the same problem with like the Simpsons Marvel crossovers they've had. It's just that horrible like corporate-y synergy like thing that they keep doing of just like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if you saw Homer Simpson as the Hulk and Lisa as Thor and all this kind of stuff, and we'll release it at the same time as Loki. It just seems to me that they're like, oh yeah, you know, your Marvel character in a Christmas project, and then you've literally got that song playing, you got like this 3D text coming at you, like all snow falling. And because Disney is so known for Christmas by having Christmas films now, including Home Alone, but you know, they did films like the Santa Claus and stuff like that. It just then just reeks of like Disneyism, and because they're in New York and you've got like a literal musical there, which is like a Disney musical like on Broadway. I'm just like, I don't understand why this is with this project. I understand the concern that you could have had that Hawkeye isn't a very interesting character, and if they just did a kind of like espionage thriller kind of thing, it would have just been generic, boring, like, oh yeah, this is what we expected from a Hawkeye series. Maybe here they're thinking of the whole like, oh yeah, you didn't expect the Wanda and Vision series to be based on like kooky sitcoms, and you didn't expect the Loki series to be like all this like weird time travel synth 60s 70s like stuff going on. But those seemed like ideas that were either like natural fits or were just so original that it just kind of worked and was unique. Here it just kind of seems like, right, one thing, other thing, smush them together. And I don't know, as Steph mentioned, I was kind of watching it thinking, if you wanted the Shane Black Marvel project, just go to Iron Man 3, like, because the action elements here make me think that they want to do a Shane Black Christmas action film, and I'm like, but you've done that already with Shane Black. Even if you wanted to do this, just call up Shane Black. He might be up for it because he did Iron Man 3. So that, you know, that's the bit I'm torn about. I kind of enjoy some of the action elements of it. It looks, you know, very professional. It looks kind of like a movie at some points, like that scene where she's firing the arrow and the clock tower and everything. And I kind of would have given them more credit if they had made this as a film. But because it's as a series, it just can't help but come across as just very like corporate, bland, kind of like hijinks with Hawkeye week to week. And yeah, I don't know. Nothing about this to me seems like, oh yeah, that's Hawkeye. This to me looks like, oh, this is like MCU Christmas, like, you know, the japes of a Marvel character that's got mixed up in a Christmas storyline. So I'm excited for Kate Bishop. I think the bit that I probably like the most is the car chase, where they're in those kind of like, I don't know, what are they, like sort of Dodge, Camaro kind of like cars which are racing down the road. That to me is kind of what I wanted from this kind of like more crime action sort of vibe. None of the like Christmassy stuff going on. And you've got a bit of the banter between Kate. You got Hawkeye, who does do a kind of like adorably funny like look when she says, "Oh my god, is that like the most powerful arrows you got?" And he does that weird like kind of like holding his mouth together. But that's kind of what I wanted, is that kind of vibe and like that kind of look. That, like, to me, that kind of looked quite visually interesting, and just that aesthetic to me was quite cool. But the rest of this, I just don't understand why. Like, why? I think the performances look good, the jokes look good, the action does look good, and it does look visually interesting that we're finally getting to see New York in a very good light, because like New York's already only really been shown in terms of that first Avengers film. So it's nice that they're showing off here as well. And, you know, a character that gets to take ownership of that city in an MCU project in some way or form, I suppose. Weird it's not Spidey, but we'll get to that. We'll see if that comes to fruition, as I know we've talked about on the podcast before. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just, that idea of just the snow falling on the Hawkeye logo and just the music, and just seeing like Clint running around like with Christmas lights in the background. This isn't what I asked for, and nothing about it afterwards then convinced me that like this is what I want. You know, WandaVision is like, oh, you know, an ode to the sitcoms. It's like, this isn't what I asked for. You watch the trailer or the first episode, you're like, oh my god, this is like so weird and kooky. I love it. This to me isn't that kind of vibe, so that's why I'm torn.
Those are definitely thoughts, Dave. I will say that. No, but I mean, I'm pretty much the same with you, but I have to say, I do think we're in the minority in this, because judging from the reaction online, it's everyone, a lot of people, I should say, not everyone, a lot of people are really digging the Christmas vibe to Hawkeye and the musical elements to it and stuff like that. So I'm with you, but I think we're in the minority on this one. But we'll soon find out. That's going to be premiering on Disney Plus on November 24th, going all the way up to the end of the year. So it's also going to be at the same time as the Book of Boba Fett. Very interesting how they're going to be releasing all these shows now. Let's take a quick break then, and we'll be back with our main topic.
Time to fly.
If you want the truth, Neo, you're going to have to follow me.
And you know you're going to fall. The only thing that matters to you is still here. I know it's why you're still fighting and why you will never give up. You don't know me, no?
After all these years, to be going back to where it all started, back to the Matrix. The Matrix Resurrection trailer is here, people. As you can hear in my voice, I'm extremely excited to talk about this trailer. We did a couple of weeks ago. We did a trailer description breakdown, which was funny, just because it was premiered at CinemaCon to some people. But now it was released to the world. They, you know, I feel as if Warner Brothers were like listening to the podcast when I said, you know, go back to the original type of marketing of premiering it on the website. They reactivated whatisthematrix.com, where we got like little snippets of footage which are actually not in the trailer, but just in promotion of the trailer. And just the hype was unbelievable. Like counting down on YouTube was insane. So very excited to talk about this. There's a lot to talk about. I have so many questions. So many questions. And Steph, I know you're a huge Matrix fan, and we're going to be discussing this for quite a while, I think. But Dave, I'm going to start with you, because you're not as into the Matrix world as me and Steph are. I remember told me recently that it's actually been a while since you've watched those films. Where is your head at with this franchise, and then what did you think about the trailer?
Yeah, so for me, it was one of those where it was kind of like I'd watched it when I was young, when I was like a teenager and stuff like that. I don't think I ever went to the cinema or anything like that. I remember like going around my friend's house and watching it. I remember it being on TV, so I watched the first film. Then he was like, "Oh my god, the second, third one." He's like getting into all the lore and all the stuff he was into, and watching it and kind of being like, yeah, this is fun. But again, that was kind of like around the time in which you had things like iRobot and stuff like coming out, and there was all these kind of like weird experiments with CG and all these different sci-fi projects and stuff coming, and it was just never something that really grabbed me. I enjoyed the kind of like wire fu stuff that that kind of embraced and started, and some of the like darker elements, and that's why out of all of them I have gone back to the first film, which I do have on 4K, which looks great, but I never went back to the other two because I've been in two, but then I guess it's one of those like the Star Wars prequels in which a lot of people might be put off just because how much people have put negativity and sort of like disappointment out about them ever since. So yeah, I've never sort of gone back, and then just it's a franchise that's kind of like went out of my mind, even though the legacy has always been there. So many projects used that kind of like slow motion, and it did a lot to revolutionize VFX, and obviously brought Keanu Reeves into the spotlight, etc. But yeah, it was just never something that sort of like grabbed me. It was kind of like things like Alien and Predator. It was always something that I like respected, but I wasn't like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or anything like that, in which I was like embedded and like, yeah, I love this stuff too. I just kind of like watched it as an outsider, like, yeah, that's cool. I appreciate it. I get why people like it. So I'd probably say watching this trailer to me was a bit like watching the Mad Max Fury Road trailer, and kind of when that came out, I was kind of like, okay, I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know what this is about. This is very strange, very kooky. So it kind of just went over my head in some way or forms, because there might be like references or elements the fans would enjoy or notice that I wouldn't notice. But also just that element of it being very kind of like visually different, going for very much a like bold style, and kind of being like, oh, wow, this is not at all what I expected. And it might be the type of thing in which I just have to go experience it and, see if then I'm like absorbed and like, oh, wow, yeah, this is something new. I didn't expect to like that, as I did with Mad Max Fury Road. But the differences to that project also are that I am more skeptical, just because I think in some ways, a lot of people will say, especially with things like VFX and stuff like that, sometimes when you have restrictions on a project, they can actually make it better. And some people will say, oh, because we weren't able to do this, that, this is what came from it, famously with things like Star Wars or the first Terminator film, etc. And I think that I'm seeing elements of that here, especially where I've then watched other projects by the Wachowskis and kind of been burned or not truly understood the appeal. Granted, I do like Cloud Atlas, but then I wasn't big into Speed Racer. I know it's got kind of like a cult following. And Jupiter Ascending, obviously that kind of like burned me. And I do have to admit, I'm watching elements of this and kind of being like, I'm seeing some Jupiter Ascending kind of like elements here, just in kind of like, detailed CGI, very vibrant world. And this isn't kind of the dark, gritty kind of stuff I think of when I think of The Matrix. And it's that element of being like, well, is it better actually when you are restrained and you're held back? I don't know, I'm just getting like, when they're sort of jumping around in the streets, and then you're sort of like seeing these different shots that is all like this all like alien, otherworldly technology, etc. It's giving me that Jupiter Ascending kind of vibe, but also elements of projects in which, I don't know, like Alice Through the Looking Glass and stuff like that, like the Alice in Wonderland films, in which I'm like, I don't know, like this might be too much CGI, it might just be too much of a vision come to life, in which it's just then just becomes just lacking in any sort of like personality or originality. Sorry, but so I don't know. Again, I get what's happening, but to me, I have been skeptical about this because, you know, it is so much of like, oh yeah, you know, the gang are back and we got the original 2 stars, etc. And I think maybe I'd even be more on board if they had, you know, brought back Lawrence Fishburne is in the first film. Yeah. So like, it's weird that he's not here, and then they seem to have some sort of like character like stand-in for him almost. But then, as people have pointed out, some people have said like amusingly that they're like, I love how just Keanu Reeves is like, no, this is my look now. I'm not going to change my look. But it does kind of throw me that I'm like, that's John Wick. What's John Wick doing in a Matrix film? Because he just has the exact same look that he does like in the John Wick films. And yeah, and then it's just the things like when they're going through the mirror and everything like that looks very kind of like different kind of movie. But also then you got this like Asian character with like blue hair, and I remember, I don't know if it's an article or video that somebody has done, but like a lot of people in that community or just have sort of brought up issues in which like you just get that negative stereotype of just like Asian girl with blue hair, and like there's like pictures like of images of just how many times
to be fair, it is the blue strip of hair.
Yeah,
we break the rules
true.
now. It's the whole hair is blue now, so it doesn't
exactly.
fit the stereotype technically. But
a lot of people have just kind of made that element of like, you know, they've got pink hair, they got purple hair, you know, like, and so I was a bit like, not sure about that. But she doesn't seem to be playing a villain, so I guess, you know, that obviously helps. But, you know, at the same time, this does have a lot of stuff that I should really love about it, that it does have this like bold visual aesthetic. It looks very fun, very different. You know, the morphing of like the agents and like the stuff in the rain, it all looks really cool. And it looks, again, like sort of like anime inspired, as they've said before that the Matrix is, you know, based on, which looks very cool. But then I just have a lot of reasons for concern. So yeah, cautiously optimistic maybe.
this description from a non-fan is very fascinating. Not gonna lie. Although, David, you started so well by saying Mad Max Fury Road, but then you went so shit by saying Alice with a Looking Glass and
Jupiter's Ascending.
Like, what the hell, David?
Yeah.
Hey, if you watch like Mad Max Fury Road and then there's something like, oh, this looks like that thing in another film, which it doesn't really because it's like so bonkers. Whereas this, there just is visual elements that just remind me, because, you know, the directors have done other big CGI fest blockbusters. I know they didn't do Alice Through Looking Glass, but again, it was another example of a very CGI heavy movie sequel.
I hear your concerns. I totally get where you're coming from. I just don't get that vibe from it personally because, you know, that is the world of the Matrix in a way. That they pretty much, granted, the first one there was a lot more practical in it, and you know, with the sequels they had a lot more technology, you know, accessible to them, and they did go. Some people, you know, and correctly as well, they can, the criticisms of some of the CGI does go a bit overboard. Some of it definitely hasn't aged well. But I will say that has always been the Wachowskis' thing of their vision. And similar to George Lucas in a way, that their imagination can't be contained to what practical is able to do. They have to explore worlds that only really computer imagery can generate, CGI. So I have no problem with that. And in fact, like, I did not know what to expect because, you know, as the old saying, a picture says 1,000 words. And when we were reading off that description and talking about that with Tom and Rob, I was, you know, there was some concerns of like, oh, it feels like they're just homaging the first film a lot with very similar scenes. And I will say on that front, the scenes that they are homaging, the homages are there, but they're done in such a different way that I feel as if it's a fresh approach to what they're trying to tell. I'm so glad we have nothing to do with the actual story in this trailer. I want to go as blind and deaf and dumb as possible into this film. If they don't release any other trailers, I'm absolutely cool with that, because I'm I just want to be immersed within the Matrix again. And I feel as if after watching this, I was like, this definitely feels like a Matrix film. And, you know, Keanu Reeves has got his John Wick look, but I'm like, that's fine. You're like, it's just bringing a different look and feel to the Matrix world, but it still feels like as it's part of the Matrix. And I know people saying that the look of the film looks different compared to the previous films. Well, I'm like, well, the Matrix was reset by the end of Revolutions, and like one of the final shots of the Revolutions is like that sunlight creeping through the city, which gave it a completely different look to what we've seen in those films, which is that's what it's in. We're in that sort of stage. But yeah, I just think the action looks incredible. Like the music choice. I mean, my God, that is how you take an old tune and remix it in an epic way, because, you know, we've complained about times that, oh, you're just getting 80s and 90s songs and slowing them down and making them more dramatic. But this one, I just felt it fit, like, my God, like White Rabbit, like it's in the title, for God's sakes. And she's talking about, you eat this, you go small, you eat this, you go big. Yeah, it's just incredible. I'm totally for this. I don't want to know any more about this film, but I also want to discuss the hell out of it with you, Steph, and you, Dave, if you have any theories about where this is going to go. But before we get into that, Steph, what are your sort of overall reactions to this trailer?
Here's the thing, though. I'm pretty sure a lot of the stunts and visual effects were practical, because I have seen behind-the-scenes footage, and there's some insane shit. Like one of the final shots of Neo and Trinity jumping off the building, that motherfucking happened. They actually had stunt people jumping off a building and being on wire and hanging between two fucking buildings. That's insane. And also, I think the motorcycle sequence, I think that completely was on location. I just wanted to point it out because it's insane, especially right now. But personally, I really loved everything about it. But I don't think it's necessarily because I'm a Matrix fan, which obviously I am. And yes, that did play a factor. Yes, I was getting goosebumps with the usage of the song. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. But even though I could see your concerns, David, actually what really attracted me a lot more was the filmmaking. But again, I like bonkers shit. I like you said about Fury Road, I fucking love those trailers. I have no idea what is happening, but I can tell there was a lot of work in this. But overall, I started watching it, and I immediately said to speak to you, Jake, or right after it came out, I said, I don't want to know anything. I don't want to theorize anything or anything like that. Yeah, I broke that rule, and now I've read everything. I've seen all the videos. I have broke down every frame by frame. I have an idea what it could be, but even that, I'm like, it could be bullshit. They could do that. But visually it was very pleasing to me. Like you very much described, it is very much the seventh iteration of the Matrix after the end of Revolutions. So that is why it looks sort of artificial, which I like because that's the beauty of the Matrix. And especially now how technology specifically for us as consumers has changed since then. We don't see it anymore as this cold thing. We're seeing it as this pretty colorful thing that we want to be in all the time and just die inside in happiness. That's what it kind of reminded me of. Without going into more details, because it could literally take hours, I like a lot about it. Like I said, I don't particularly need anything else to be sold to this. I even with the poster, which basically just the two pills, I'm fine with this. Just make this the official poster. You don't need to make another one. Most likely we'll make another one with the floating heads because Warner Brothers loves doing that for some reason. But yeah, I am very excited, and I might say the sacrilegious thing. I'm more excited about this than Dune.
I think with the visual things and the concerns, that probably more goes down to just how many times I've been burned by those type of projects. So I'm like, oh yeah, a new fantasy sci-fi, franchise project, things like Tomorrowland, which like, oh wow, that looks cool, like inventive, all that kind of stuff. Like some of the, even the new like Pirates of the Caribbean, even though we got burned by that a few times, you're like, oh, this could be the one, they could be saving it here. And then, like even like Alice Through the Looking Glass, you're like, okay, maybe they're doing something like interesting here. I even had faith for Artemis Fowl, like the first teaser. The second, like when the other trailers come out, you're like, okay, this looks quite bad. But the first one, I was like, oh, this actually looks quite cool, quite inventive. Good use of the CGI, very like imaginative worlds. So I've probably just been burned too many times by that kind of stuff. But I agree with you, Jake. Like if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be them. Because like I said, I appreciate the visual stuff in Speed Racer. That's why I want to go back to it. I love the visual stuff in Cloud Atlas. And yeah, it is kind of like my jam of having these like expansive worlds and like George Lucas of, not being constrained, etc. I guess it's maybe just because like Star Wars, this is a franchise that has come from both worlds in the way that Star Wars has. And maybe just like the aesthetics of it being like all bright and sort of colorful, etc. then seems strange to say to comparison to like the first film. But yeah, I am, I'm hopeful, and a lot of that stuff is like stuff that I should enjoy, and I'm looking forward to. Hopefully it comes through.
I will say, Dave, like I also hear your concerns about Jessica Henwick and the blue hair, but she's a standout for me in this trailer. Like for me, I just saw the blue hair and like the style of it as just part of the aesthetic of the Matrix. This sort of cyberpunk sort of look. She's got the piercings, the short hair. It's just part of that whole aesthetic. Do you know what I mean? But she's also not sexualized, so that's why I see where you're coming from, but I don't see it personally. I just think that's just part of the look of the Matrix, these weird kooky hairstyles and stuff like that. And from the trailer as well, she's just doing for me, she's doing the best action sequences. Like when she's like, the soldiers are firing on her and she jumps off the roof and lands on the other roof and jumps, like that was awesome. And then when she's like jumping over the car, and also like those classic Matrix moves where they're like jumping through the buildings, like on the ceilings and stuff like that as she's shooting. Awesome. Like all the action just looked fantastic. As I was watching, I was like, this feels like the proper wire work that we've seen in the Matrix. And, now in a way, like we try so hard now, or Hollywood tries so hard to make it look as real as possible. And I really like that within this, you still got the wire work, but it looks like it looks like it would have been made sort of like in the 90s, a bit more stagnant and not as fluid. But I feel as if that's just part of the Matrix aesthetic and the body language of the Matrix as well. So yeah, I'm all for that. And but in terms of like theories and stuff, like, we open up with that scene of like him talking to Neil Patrick Harris. Like, and I also think it's not an accident that he's wearing everything in blue. He's got blue glasses. He's got the blue shirts. That we're seeing a lot of blue everywhere. Keanu or Thomas Anderson is being prescribed loads and loads of blue pills. But in like those like really quick shots, but we see like this shot of like like Neo's body on like this sort of surgical thing with all the machines like doing stuff to him. Like he's got wires and stuff like that. So everyone's sort of speculating, have the machines resurrected Neo in some way? Like did they rebuild him, because obviously at the end of Revolutions he died and the machines took him away. Steph, what do you think? How do you think Neo is back? Do you think this is the same Neo? Do you think this is a different variation of Neo?
Oh, it's like a seventh iteration. Oh, great. I do think they did bring him and Trinity back because they did have the bodies. And because technically the machines are the ones that create the humans from the farming, I couldn't see why they couldn't just, if they have the bodies, they could just reanimate them in some capacity. So I do think it's them. Here's my crazy theory. The whole fourth film is a simulation within a simulation for the machines to test if a new version of the Matrix could work against the humans. Like specifically the fourth film, like that's why Morpheus looks different, or that's why so many different characters specifically going for Neo. Maybe like a test to see if they will be able to control him, keeping down, but at the same time they have Trinity trying to use her as a way to keep him down. But maybe like it goes to the other way around. Like in the end, actually, it's far more of a unity thing for being the one than just being just one. I'm only saying this because there's too many footage within this shots that is footage from the first film, which I'm like, what the hell are you doing there? Unless you are actively trying to use, because we know from the architect in Reloaded, when he was in the television room, each screen had actual footage from the two films. So that means that one, he was telling the truth, and he's actually what we have as footage of the film is actually a recording from him. So I could see him or a variation of him trying to use that footage to control him. And like I've noticed like one crazy theory saying that the films are actual films within that variation of the Matrix. And that this version of Thomas Edison is actually a producer and slash actor playing like Neo.
Whoa. That's a bit wild, even for me, I think. Like,
yeah, like it is wild. It is one of those, like, I can't see it, but from all the people I could see doing this is Lana for sure. So yeah, it's again, I'm not like diehard about this theory. I'm like like I said before recording, it could be anything, and most likely I will accept it. Because I mean, look at us now. I mean, even all the naysayers of the sequels, we've come to the point that we all accept exactly what it is. So, but to be fair, I do have faith. I do have faith in Lana because of how well she not only matured, but she had like a complete change as a person since then, and hopefully she has come to the point of not only like self-actualizing as a person, but also as a filmmaker. And even though I haven't finished Sense8, up to a point I watched, in means of storytelling, I was really on board. And the fact that she's bringing in one of her lead writers from the show to write this, but also David Mitchell, who was the author of Cloud Atlas, the book, which is a very peculiar choice because David Mitchell is like, he's like another bonkers writer. He can write. He has written so many different kind of books, and to have him back here, I have no idea what could happen. But for some reason, even though a lot of reboots have proven me otherwise, I have faith in this a lot more than maybe I should have. Because same with David, I have also been worn out with this kind of big scale sci-fi fantasy epics slash reboots. Like I have been disappointed many times, but for some reason, because of the level of production quality and scale, and also the how secretive they've been about it, I have a feeling that could be something at least unique. I think that's what I want mostly. I want something unique and different. Even if it's shit, at least I can appreciate that it's unique. And even if it's shit, I'm very certain that Yahya Abdul-Mateen II will be amazing.
Oh, he's already gonna kill it, judging from what I've seen in the trailer. Like when he says, the only thing that still matters to you is still here. I know that's why you're still fighting, or something like that. I just like, he sells it so much. And also when he's holding out the two pills, he's like, time to fly. I love it. No, yeah, I'm with you, Steph. I just feel as if, even if it is shit, like it will, I still feel it will be bold, ambitious, fresh, and unique. Because that's just what the Wachowskis do. I know it's just Lana this time, but still, like, they just have that effect. And I think regardless, this is going to be a controversial film when it comes out. I think a lot of people will love it, and I think a lot of people will struggle with it. Let's just say that. And I will say on that, like, the big reboots coming back, and that you guys are worn and tired about them, and so am I. I think the difference with those is that a lot of them always have different filmmakers attached or studios sort of just looking for a quick buck sort of thing. This feels like, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but I did read Lana's comments about when she first came up with this idea for the film after the passing of her parents and one of her friends. And it just, to me, from reading her comments, it just seems like a very personal film to her. Something that, helped her during a very difficult time to get this off the ground. So to me, and from what I've seen from there, it looks like it's coming a place from love. Because why would you come back now to do The Matrix sort of thing? That's what I said in the last show. So yeah, that's sort of where I am with this. I'm very, very excited. I don't know about my most anticipated, Steph. I think it's my second just after June. But for me, it's because that element of like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. With June, I'm more like, I know the story through and through. I just want to see it come to life sort of thing. So I that's more like a safe number one. But Dave, anything else to say about this?
Well, also with Dune, I suppose that's the difference with the visuals as well, is maybe just like personally as well, that you look at something like Blade Runner 2049 and I didn't look at that and go like, too much CGI, too much of this, too much of that. Again, because there was that amazing cinematography and stuff in that film, and maybe just that aesthetic and the Blade Runner sort of approach, was very appealing there. And, I guess in some ways the Matrix sort of borrowed and used some of that as well. And even with like things like Ghost in the Shell, you see in this trailer, there's that moment where it's like one of the characters is a Trinity or something like that.
Trinity, yeah.
Yeah, where she's got like wires and stuff in her. That looks very much like Ghost in the Shell. But in that anime, it's very dark, it's very moody, it's kind of like muted colors, which the Matrix uses a lot. So maybe that's what my expectation was there. But I think that it is relevant for you guys to say about the personal aspect of this, as Steph said as well, and just how Lana has changed, that might not hold her back anymore, is that she can now not just feel contained and restricted as a certain type of person, but also as a filmmaker, and that they can be like, hey, I can do all these ideas and, visuals that I wanted to do, but felt too scared or felt like pressured to do before, because that was the way you had to do it. Whereas since, I think they've done a lot of projects which have kind of like gone against that grain, and this might be another example of that. And I agree with you guys. I think it's going to be very controversial, and I think it's kind of going to be, it reminds me a bit of where I've just edited like our Well Good Movies episode. Our guest Chris Maxwell was talking about Tenet, and very much with Christopher Nolan there. He's a filmmaker which is like, accept it. This is the rules of my world, and that that's just how it is. And I think that could be a case here as well. If they're like, similar to like, other controversial films, Last Jedi, etc., of being like, this is my vision, this is the way I want to do it. If you don't like it, fine. But you'll still have that 50-50 split, though, I think.
What the Wachowskis do, though, different, is that they build the word, people fall in love with it, and they go, I'm going to break it in half and change it again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I could see that happening very much here. This, to me, seems, especially because it took so long to do, and the type of filmmakers they are, I can imagine, like theory-wise, I can imagine that this isn't going to be one for the people who want, like, I want the Matrix 4 in which Neo comes back and that the war begins again, or whatever, just like a stereotypical sequel. I think that they don't seem at all like those kind of filmmakers, and I think that's where it's going to split people. But I could very much see this kind of being like a, again, what if, or something, or like a kind of what if Neo took the blue pill or something like that, or like what if this happened, what if Neo never got approached to go into the Matrix, what if all of this happened within one of the people's plugins, it's a dream. I could imagine loads of like weird theory stuff like that, and that's where I could imagine something like the ending would be controversial, because people are like, what, it turned out to be that, like, oh my god. So, and I could imagine Lana Wachowski doing something like that, like, having this idea later on and being like, oh, what if that never happened? Or what if things went down a different route? Or, what if Neo did come back kind of like hook or something, which is like, what if Peter Pan, like forgot he was Peter Pan? That kind of idea of just like, what if this character forgot who he was, or he came back and people have to remind him something, because there's that fairy tale aspect, I guess, there with the Alice in Wonderland stuff. I can imagine them doing something like that, and I think it would be interesting. So we'll see.
So yeah, plenty of theories about we could keep on going from every single frame, but we're not going to do that. I'm sure you can find plenty of Twitter threads and YouTube videos to theorize and speculate. And yeah, you've got Dave says he's got those big people pointing at him, the big arrows, and the people with the red eyes, all sorts of things going on YouTube. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this, and I can't wait. I've got to see this on the biggest screen possible in IMAX when it comes out. So yeah, that will be coming out on December 22nd. So you might have a good Christmas after all, Steph.
Yeah, boy.
It's a Christmas miracle.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with our pull list.
Well, after X-Men hit at the box office, all the studios started buying up every comic property they could get their dirty little hands on.
So as Tom is not here, it is up to me once again to do the pull list. Now, I actually looked at my actual pull list about what I was picking up this week, and I was like, oh, I'm actually only picking up 2 comics. So I said, Tom, what were you actually going to tell us as your pull list? So I got a couple of his suggestions. So first up with DC, we got Rorschach issue 12. It has come to an end. This maxi series by Tom King of Rorschach, set in the same world as the HBO series. It's been a wild ride, I will say this, and it's been very controversial at times, but I do think it's definitely worth a read if you're a fan of Watchmen and the world of Watchmen, and especially the recent HBO series. So definitely pick that up. That is the end of that series. And then we'll stick with DC. We've got Batman 89 issue 2. So this is following the adventures of Michael Keaton's Batman. If you're a fan of that version of Batman, then this is probably the comic for you. And then we've also got in Marvel X-Men Trial of Magneto issue 2. This is one of Tom's. Now I haven't read this, so I'll just read the synopsis. It sounds pretty crazy. Heroes of the Marvel Universe come to Krakoa for a memorial. Now they've got to fight. Magneto pushes Krakoa and the Council to the brink. Also, there's something wrong with the body. Interesting. We'll see what happens. Dave's got a worried expression. We'll see what happens in that comic. And then last one for Marvel is Fantastic Four issue 35. This is a Titanic 60th anniversary issue. That's right. The Fantastic Four are 60 years old. What a legacy they've had, Marvel's first family. So this is a giant issue, and it's about the entire Kang bloodline out to destroy every era of the Fantastic Four. So, if you're hyped on Kang and the He Who Remains, if you're still hyped on that from Loki, then this is a series to pick, issue to pick up. And then for it's sort of Marvel, but not really Marvel, I'm going to go to Star Wars. There is the big comic series going on, War of the Bounty Hunters, and this is Boosh issue 1. Boosh, Bausch, Boosh, however you want to pronounce it, I don't know. But this is actually a one-off special issue about this character, the outfit that Leia wore in Return of the Jedi when she was rescuing Han from Jabba's palace. But this is actually before that, when it's the actual dude, not Leia. So I'll read those off again. We got Rorschach issue 12, Batman 89 issue 2, X-Men Trial of Magneto issue 2, Fantastic Four issue 35, and Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters Boosh Bausch Boosh issue 1. And then for my classic pull, we've been talking about the Matrix Resurrections trailer. I'm going to pull the Matrix comics. There's about, I don't know, like 400 pages worth. You can get this big omnibus of the Matrix comics written, it's got stories from the Wachowskis themselves, Neil Gaiman, Dave Gibbons, who illustrated on Watchmen. You got some incredible artists and writers on there, so I highly recommend that if you want to explore more of the world of the Matrix. These comics all came out between the first Matrix and Reloaded, and then past that as well, and it's all collected in this big volume that you can get at most bookshops, comic book stores, and online. So highly recommend those, guys. Any of those pulls, shout out to you. Are you going to be picking any of those up or anything interesting for you?
think the fact that there's so much ending is interesting. I'd be interested in Batman 99. Does he can he move his neck in those comic panels?
I don't think so. I think they're keeping it, with the shoulder moves.
Yeah, interesting.
The only thing I would like to add is that Warner Brothers should finally release a remastered version of both Enter the Matrix and Path of Neo video games. Because what the hell?
Can we also get a 4K remaster of the Animatrix as well, please?
That too.
Is that with the Animaniacs and the Matrix combined?
Dude, I'd watch that.
Also, that Bush comic, I just wanted to end with just that guy. Is it a dude then originally?
Yeah, it's a dude originally.
Okay, can he just be walking in the desert? He's just chilling, eating some squid mantel mix, and Leia just comes along and just clubs him with a log, then steals his armor, and then he just wakes up kind of like Boba Fett, what happened? Where am I?
It would be funny if for 10 issues, it's just this one dude just walking around, doing nothing, literally, just doing mundane shit, completely cinema verite, just normal life, and then just the final panel is where he gets knocked out. I'd read that.
That sounds
just essentially do a comic version of what Robot Chicken did with Greedo, in which his mum rings his house and is like, Greedo, are you okay? I haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, so well, that's the end of the show then. So thank you all for listening to this episode. We appreciate everyone coming on board every week and new listeners to keep expanding this family of Capes, Cowls and Masks. And thank you, Steph, for coming on board. I know you didn't want to miss the opportunity to discuss the Matrix Resurrections trailer, but at the same time, it's always a pleasure having you here.
It's always good to be here. And, anytime to have a Matrix talk, or even now, a Hawkeye talk, who would have thanked?
So where can the people find you, Steph, and what are you getting up to?
You can find me on Twitter at @SYFlorakis, where at the moment I am just tweeting a lot about the festival as I'm preparing myself for it. And also, we kind of are officially in the awards season, as now films that supposedly are going to be big players of the awards will be coming out. And also this week we're going to have a trailer, if it's not already out, of Nightmare Alley. That is basically the new film from Guillermo del Toro. Now officially Academy Award winner Guillermo del Toro. And I'm very looking forward to it, and I hope we get it before the end of the year. And through my Twitter account, you can find my letterbox, which I basically make a small comments or small, very tiny reviews of each film I watched this year. I have not reached the 365 films yet, mainly because after watching Malignant, I feel traumatized enough that I feel that I need some time off, maybe spend some time with the dogs on the park. Not my dogs, other people's dogs, because I want one, but my landlord is an asshole. And and also soon I'll be watching Many Saints of Newark, which is basically a prequel film of The Sopranos, which I'm a huge fan of. And finally, we're gonna get No Time to Die, Mr. Bond. And we've been waiting for this for so long, and I can't wait to see Daniel Craig die. That's not a spoiler. I don't know if he dies, but he's so excited for this, so he must die.
It's the Harrison Ford effect. He's like, just kill him already.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Dave? Are you also looking forward to Daniel Craig dying in No Time to Die?
Oh, I'm just looking forward to that film dying after the amount of time it's taken to come out. So, yeah. But I will say I am looking forward to seeing Rami Malek as the villain in that. I think that he has been waiting for a good follow-up to Bohemian Rhapsody, as we all know that he did a decent performance, but just not in a great film. So hopefully, this is a good performance in a good film. So, yeah. And also, yeah, I'm with Steph. It's exciting now that we're getting to award season, as it's officially begun, as you've got a film like Respect, which has now come out as the kind of I'm going to release really early in awards season, hoping that I'm a big winner, and then get forgot about unless it's something like Judy, in which it's just like gets the obligatory Best Actress nomination / win, and that's all it gets. That's what that film is just kind of screaming to me right now. So you can catch me over on Twitter at David Osgar, OSGAR, if you want to see the fun of moving or anything else that I saw point out in life, or maybe some of the weird things I might be seeing in Chepstow now that I'm moving there, living there. You can also catch me, Jake, Steph on Twitter as well, where we're giving you images. That's a U starter pack, so if you want to go see what I'm all about, go check that out. You can also go on Letterboxd. I haven't been very active on there lately due to so much busyness with work and moving, etc. But hopefully I should be back soon talking about all the crazy films I am watching.
Oh yeah, don't worry, Dave. Once you move to Chepstow, that's it. We're having tons of movie nights. You have no idea. But yeah, I'm on all the socials the same. I'm on Twitter talking about, all the stuff that I've been watching and retweeting and theorizing and all that sort of good stuff. And also on Letterboxd, just rating and reviewing all the films I watch. And, I'm excited for award season, but I'm also excited because we just got so many amazing blockbusters still yet to come. What with Dune, Eternals, The Matrix, and so many other stuff. Can't wait. So plenty of other stuff to be excited about. And then as for the show, you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Cowls Masks. And whether you use Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever, subscribe and follow us on there. And if you're on Apple, leave us a rating and a review, as it all helps us go up in the ranking. So thank you for listening, everyone. We'll see you all next week. Stay safe. Goodbye.
Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye.
And respect all the animators.
Fa la 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 la.